This is Neera Menon of Only Happiness Counts. Welcome to the Top 10% Summit. Today, we have Coach Michael Taylor in the house. I have had to have Michael on this summit simply because this guy is going to show you that no matter where you think you are right now in your life, you can still live an extraordinary life. And what uniquely qualifies Michael to give us this insight is the fact that he overcame from being a high school dropout, having bankruptcy, having foreclosure, suffering from depression, to be standing here right before you as a truly a super achiever. And honestly, when you hear Michael speak, you will be left with the feeling that really anything that you want is completely possible. So more about that a bit later. And before we get to Michael, I want to talk to you about this summit because the top 10% is all about creating the kind of success that's going to put you in the top 10% of the population in any area you choose, whether it's business, whether it's finance, whether it's health or relationships. I believe that successful people in this kind of bracket think differently. That's why they're successful. So I'm going to ask each one of my speakers basically a two-part question. First of all, how did they become successful? So that you guys can take some of their insights and join that top 10% club. And secondly, and probably more importantly, is how have they handled the kind of challenges that would send most of us running for cover? And in other words, actually, how do you develop a Teflon type mindset that doesn't only give up, but actually works through those challenges? So, without further ado, Michael, welcome to the Top 10% Summit.
Well, hello, Neera. We are really glad to be here, and what a great topic. I consider myself to be a specialist in the happiness category, so I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you.
Excellent, excellent. So Mike, I've given everybody a bit of an insight into your background, but can you tell us more about yourself, where you've come from you know, you've had some significant challenges to being
Sure.
the entrepreneur that you are today.
Well, let's go back about 20 years. And approximately 20 years ago, I was living the so-called American dream. I had the house, the wife, the 2.5 kids, and by society standards, I was pretty successful. And so at the age of 24, I had actually did everything I thought that I was supposed to do in order to be happy with my life. And then within about a 6-year time frame, I went from having the American dream to living the American nightmare. I lost everything. As you mentioned, I went through a divorce, a bankruptcy, a foreclosure, a deep state of depression in which I even contemplated taking my own life. And then I received a miracle. During the darkest period of my life, I was sitting up late one night because I couldn't sleep because I was so depressed.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was sitting there, I looked across my room and I noticed something that I hadn't really paid attention to. And what it was is, as I looked across the room, I noticed that every book on my bookshelf had something to do with making money. And as I was sitting there looking at this book, this question just popped in my head. And the question was this: Michael, what if you took the same energy and effort you've used in trying to get rich and simply learn how to be happy?
Wow.
And that one simple question literally changed my life in an instant. Because in that moment, I recognized that all the exterior things I had been chasing couldn't make me happy. Because I had did everything society says I was supposed to do to be happy, but I was absolutely miserable. And so in asking myself that one simple question, I focused all of my energy on simply learning how to be happy.
Wow.
And it's amazing because I accomplished a lot in a very short period of time. And I experienced, I guess, what some people might call burnout. But for me, now that I've gone on this, what I call spiritual journey, I have come to recognize that The universe works in mysterious ways. And I believe sometimes we have to experience what I call the cosmic slap upside the head. And it is simply the universe's way of saying, you're not doing what you were put on this planet to do. And as a result of that cosmic slap on the head and being trapped in the corporate environment, I walked away from it all. And then what I found out was I never knew or dreamed that I would be a writer or a speaker. But as a result of all the pain that I went through, I uncovered, or shall I say, discovered this gift that I have. And so what I've come to know is that everything works together for good when we open our minds and awareness to that good. And if we will simply focus our attention on being happy, everything else will follow.
Okay. So what you're saying is that if you feel great and good about yourself, everything you want just comes easily and effortlessly to you, right?
Sure, and actually that's the way it's set up. But the problem is we get caught up into what society says we're supposed to do and have, and that's where the trouble comes in, because we aren't paying attention to our inner world. There's the quote that I absolutely love, and it says, "If you don't go within, you will always go without." And so for me, I had always looked outside of myself for happiness. But it wasn't until I looked within, it wasn't until I began my own inner journey of transformation, connected with the true essence of who I am, and it has allowed me to live what I call an extraordinary life.
Wow. So would you say the very first step is to actually getting to know yourself then?
Well, the absolute key, I believe, to living a happy life is, I think it was Socrates who said, "To thine own self be true."
Yeah.
Followed by know thyself. And unfortunately, the majority of people on the planet have not taken the time to do that first step. But until we do that, then nothing else really matters, because we can accumulate all the external things, but if we don't know who we really are, if we haven't connected to our true essence as human beings, we'll never be fulfilled or happy.
Sure. So I completely get what you're saying. So actually there's even a step earlier to that. Then first of all, I guess from what you're saying, you've got to realize that everything you've been thinking you've inherited in terms of the societal norms that you're talking about.
Correct. And I use the term conditioning.
Conditioning, correct.
When we talk about conditioning, we have to understand that there's really three primary sources of our conditioning. Number one is our family.
Yep.
Number two is our culture. And number three is our society. So depending on what family you come from, depending on what culture you're born into, and depending on what society you live in, all of those things shape our belief systems.
Sure.
And we have to be willing to examine some of those belief systems, because they may not be congruent with who we are. And that takes a lot of courage to do so.
It certainly does. So, I mean, what you're saying here then, we've inherited everything we've ever thought about, I guess. Just like you were saying about the money books along the shelf, that wasn't you, was it? That was something society saying to you that you had to make all of this money, and you did, and you were very successful, and but actually you weren't that happy. So then coming on to the next step, Michael, knowing yourself in terms of how do you go about understanding which bits of what you've inherited you want, in terms of knowing yourself?
Well, this is how I look at it. When we begin this process, this journey of what I call transformation, when we decide, we make a choice, because that's what life is about. It's about making choices. When we choose to discover who we really are, that's the first step. Second step, I believe, this is the second step. We must become comfortable being uncomfortable, because there's no growth without discomfort, and that's what most people are uncomfortable with. So we want to take the easy way out. So we live in a society and culture that generally tells us that there's quick fix. There's a process, there is a system, if you will, that is, I believe, designed by the infinite intelligence that created this universe. For example, before creation, there's always chaos. No matter what you want to create, there's always chaos. Well, I believe that the chaos is simply preparation for the creation. So when I experience an idea for something and I have a vision, the first thing that happens are obstacles are going to show up. Well, if I have a clear vision, then I've got to hold on to that and know that the opposition is not against me. The opposition is preparing me for ultimately creating what I want. But if we aren't comfortable being uncomfortable, if we aren't comfortable getting out of our own box, then we'll live mediocre lives. We must be willing to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's the only way we'll grow.
Okay. So is that from having a clear vision?
Well, I think that's the biggest challenge most people have. They don't have a vision. They don't have the intentions, the goals to move towards. And so that would be, in my opinion, the next step is you need to know and decide what it is that you really want. So what do you really want? And if you aren't writing down your goals and intentions, it's unlikely that you're going to accomplish them. There's a wonderful saying that says, people don't plan to fail. They simply fail to plan. And so we have to be willing to plan. We have to set intentions of where we're going so that we can set a path to get there.
Okay. So I think there's three things you've said so far, which is, first of all, knowing yourself. Secondly, you've got to be comfortable with the fact that actually you are going to be uncomfortable. So just get used to it. And then in third step being having a clear vision of really what you want. Plan, otherwise you're going to fail. So what else would you add to that mix of things?
Well, here's my favorite part.
Okay.
I have a theory that if it isn't fun, you shouldn't be doing it.
Okay.
Now, what people don't realize is that challenges and obstacles can be fun. Understanding that I have everything within me I need to accomplish all of my goals, it makes those challenges fun. I enjoy the challenge. And so if we aren't having fun, then we're probably not on the right path. Because life, I believe, is supposed to be effortless. It's supposed to be easy. But we get in the way of that. And so one way to make it easy is to incorporate having fun and finding the things that we're truly passionate about. See, most people can't even answer that question. If you ask them, so tell me, what are you really passionate about? And then people have this blank stare on their face. They don't know what they're really passionate about. Well, when I say fun, that's really another word for passion.
Sure.
What are you really passionate about? For me, for example, as a speaker, I am passionate about speaking. When I get on a stage and there's hundreds of people in the audience, I mean, it's like a high for me.
Yeah.
I get so excited, and some people, or most people, feel fear. I feel excitement because I feel a responsibility to share my gifts and talents with that audience.
Sure.
So it's not about me, it's about me sharing my gifts. It's about me sharing what I'm passionate about. And so if you truly want to live an extraordinary life, you've got to connect with those things that you're truly passionate about, which in another word is do the things that are fun to you.
Right. Okay. And so if we follow all these 4 steps, that would be your key to success, right?
Well, that's a great starting point. But see, what you have to understand, and this is why I think a lot of people get tripped up.
Okay.
Every human being is unique. If I were to lay out a specific plan and said, I want you to follow these steps and you'll be happy, it's unlikely that my steps would work for you. The key is to grasp the concepts that I'm sharing and apply them to your own life. Because we all have our own unique individual paths to follow. But we have to have mentors and teachers that guide us along the way. And so what I try to do is share information and wisdom coaching or teaching simply come to their own understanding of their own path and use some of my examples as stepping stones to help them get there. Mm-hmm. But every person is different and unique, and I believe that's why the universe doesn't duplicate itself. That's why we're all individual. That's why we all have different fingerprints, because we're unique by design. Yeah. And so our paths will be unique by design. And it's really, in my experience, I can really sum up the spiritual journey in one simple word, and that word is trust. When we get to the point where we know without question that we are supported by, encouraged by, guided by something bigger than ourselves, we learn to fall into and surrender and trust that the universe is going to provide us everything we need.
Okay.
To fulfill our destiny.
Sure, and actually you've mentioned this quite a few times now, and trust actually is probably the biggest reason why a lot of people don't become successful or go for what they want, whatever success is in their heads. So how did you build that trust? Where did you get this feeling that whatever challenge that came along the way, well, it's going to be handled?
Well, it's interesting because after I began this process and I started doing my inner work, which actually my transformational journey began with my courage to go to therapy. That's what really helped me get started. It was the willingness to say, I need help. And in doing so, I began this journey. Well, at the beginning of this journey, I was so in my head about everything that I started rationalizing all of the growth that I had, and I related it to psychology. I said, well, if I can heal my childhood wounds and I can do all these things and I'm starting to feel better about myself and so forth, well, I actually came to a conclusion at one point in my life that there was nothing bigger than myself out there. In other words, I was an atheist.
Right.
I became an atheist because during this growth process of dealing with my psychological issues that were really driving my behaviors, mm-hmm. I was really closed-minded to anything bigger than me. But as I continued my growth, as I continued on this journey, and we're talking a 20-year journey here, but as I continued on, I started asking myself some deeper questions like, why am I here? What is the point of life? What is my purpose and things like that. And as I continued to heal and grow, then I started to connect to something greater than myself. And so I found a spiritual path that really worked for me. And so I went from being an atheist to being someone who had some experiences that proved to me that there was something out there or in here that was guiding me. And so as I started this journey, it was like I started taking these baby steps to deepen my spirituality, and that's how the trust began. For example, when I joined, are you familiar with Unity Church?
No. But...
Okay, there's a church called Unity, and mm-hmm. Unity is a non-denominational, what some people call New Thought.
Okay.
New Thought Church, metaphysical church. Well, I actually joined Unity because it really resonated with what I had always believed God would be like. Not this judgmental, anthropomorphic being up in the sky looking at me going, you're a bad sinner, that kind of thing. Well, when I joined Unity, I really got to a place where I knew that there was something out there, something that I could connect with. And when I started the process, I started trusting that this universe, I like to call it, was supporting me. And Unity says that there is but one presence and one power in the universe. God, the good, omnipotent. That's their doxology. That's what mm-hmm. their principle is based on. There's but one presence in the universe. And that presence is love. And so when I accepted that, truly accepted that, then a lot of little miracles started happening. And the biggest miracle I had was I was sitting at home one night, and I had absolutely no possessions. I was actually homeless. I was actually homeless for 2 years. And I had finally kind of started picking myself back up, and I found a job, and I got my first apartment, which I hadn't had in a couple of years. And I had absolutely no furniture in this apartment. All I had was an air mattress. Mm-hmm. And it was actually a borrowed air mattress. And so I had no possessions. But one night I was sitting up, and I was looking around at my air mattress. And all of a sudden I had what I consider to be life's greatest paradox, which was I had absolutely nothing and absolutely everything at the same time. And in that moment, as I was sitting here thinking about this, I had no stuff whatsoever. But in my heart of hearts, I had never been happier in my life. And I realized for the first time that I didn't need anything outside of me to be happy. And I sat on this air mattress and cried for 3 hours.
Wow.
It was a joy that goes beyond human understanding. It was a connection to something much deeper and greater than myself. And it was that awakening in that instant that I knew I could trust this universe to support me.
Wow. And everything since has just gone wonderfully well for you, right?
Well, yes and no. Yes, in that, as I mentioned, I believe everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And there has and still is challenges in my life, but I'm in a place now of such deep trust that I recognize in the moment that it all works together for good. And so as I look at what I've accomplished, especially over the last 5 years or so in hosting a radio show, a television show, and doing all these things, what I recognize is that, wow, it's an amazing journey that I'm on. And I realize that I'm really just warming up. I'm really just getting started in what I want to accomplish in life. But I feel like now I'm an adolescent in my spiritual development.
Right.
I feel like I've gone through this process. And now, actually, I'm getting close to my teenage years where I'm just alive and full of passion. And just, you remember how it felt to be a teenager? Yeah. That's kind of how I feel in my spiritual development right now. It's like, man, I've gone through this process and now, yeah, I'm ready, God. I'm ready for something much bigger. And the universe is saying, yeah, get ready. Hold on, because it's coming. And it's probably bigger than you can even imagine right now.
Wow. That's absolutely awesome. So how do you actually see it panning out then for yourself? Because you've done so much already.
Well, here's what I know to be true.
Yeah.
As a human being, we have an infinite capacity for learning and for growing. I don't believe there's a place to get to. I believe there's just this amazing journey that we're on. And my goal is to constantly grow and improve and be the best me that I can possibly be. And so as I sit here now and think about where I've been, I guess in a lot of ways I can say that the dark periods of my life are gone forever. Will not have to go back there anymore. I don't care what else happens in my life. I will never have to go back to that dark place. Why? Because I know who I am. Okay? I know what I'm capable of. And so as I start setting goals and intentions for the future, I mean, I'm already seeing myself, national, international television guy. I said, man, this guy, he writes books, he speaks, and he empowers people. And my whole purpose and intention is, as mentioned, I said that I believe every human being has a divine purpose. Well, here's my purpose. This is why Michael Taylor was put on this planet, okay? My purpose is to educate, motivate, and inspire men to live extraordinary lives. That is my purpose, because I believe one of the greatest challenges we have on the planet right now is to redefine masculinity. To redefine what it means to be a man, because all of the roles of masculinity are changing so rapidly, a lot of men aren't keeping up with the changes. For example, here in America, for the first time in this country's history, Did you know that women outnumber men in the workforce? For the first time in this
Wow.
country, for the first time in this country's history, there are more women graduating from college than men. And this has nothing to do with ethnicity.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking purely gender here, women versus men. And so what I believe is with all these changes, with women making all these strides in business and education and spirituality, men are going, well, what's my role? Because women are filling a lot of roles that men used to have. Because as men, we've been conditioned to believe that we had two primary responsibilities. Number one is to provide. Number two is to protect.
Sure.
What no one taught us as men was to how to connect.
True.
So what I'm about is teaching men how to learn how to connect, to let them know that it's okay to connect, to let them know that it doesn't make you less of a man to be in touch with your emotions, to be in touch with who you are. See, and these are some new concepts that men are going, whoa, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I'm not ready for it. But see, that's my purpose. That's what I'm passionate about. I empower men to recognize that the old ways of being men no longer work. And this has nothing to do with cultures either, because American culture, German culture, Australian culture, I talk to men all over the world, and we all have the same issues.
Okay. Yeah, so this is coming back right to what you said at the very, very beginning, which was you got to realize that your conditioning of that you've got from school, from the wherever you're born, the culture you're born into, it isn't who you are.
Exactly. And that is also probably the most difficult thing that we can do as a human being, is to break free from our conditioning. Now, do you like movies?
Absolutely.
Have you ever seen The Matrix?
Oh God, yes. Break out the matrix. Absolutely.
Yes, because The Matrix is a perfect metaphor
Yeah.
for life.
Completely.
Because it's really about us waking up. It's really about us understanding that we're all Neo. We all have this amazing gift, but we have to be willing to wake up. But it takes certain courageous people to be the one, to
Sure.
recognize and understand that they're the one. Well, I'm claiming that I'm the one. I'm not saying that I'm any better than or different than. It's just that I'm making a choice. I'm choosing to accept my divinity. And how do I do that? By sharing my gifts and talents with the world to make the world a better place.
Sure. Okay. So let's just move on to this thing about breaking out of the matrix. So anyone listening, okay, how do you start to break out of the matrix? Do you have what's your recipe for that, if there is one?
Well, I believe there are two things that cause a person to wake up or to change. The first being pain. Most of us will not change until we're in so much pain we don't have a choice. That's the first thing. The second reason that people choose to change is because they experience what I call divine discontent. It is that feeling in our soul that we just know intuitively that something's not right.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't explain it, but we just intuitively, internally know that something is just off and we can't figure it out. We may have all the money, the titles, the positions, but there's a part of us that says, is that all there is? So those are the two things that generally cause us to wake up. So for those who are listening, the first question I'll ask is, are you in pain? If you experience pain, that's a wake-up call. Pain is the universe's way of getting your attention. Secondly, if you're not feeling pain, but you know that you're just kind of sliding through life, and there's a part of you that goes, there's more. Well, see, that's the universe also saying, there is more. That's the universe's way of saying, it's time for you to start listening to your inner voice, your inner guidance. Because our inner guidance is always talking to us, all the time. We've just been conditioned not to listen. But when we start tuning in, when we start listening to, connecting to our inner wisdom, it will guide us to where we need to go.
Okay, so What does this inner guidance look like? The first two are, I can understand, quite obvious in terms of if you're not happy, if you're feeling pain, something's not quite right in your life. But then, how do you get that confidence to listen to your inner guidance? Because
Well, for me personally, I am a huge proponent of meditation
right.
because meditation is simply the process of getting your mind and your thoughts out of the way so that you can connect to that inner guidance and wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Because that inner guidance and wisdom is there, it's just covered up with all the chatter and noise of our minds. And so, in essence, if we really want to connect to our inner guidance, we've got to be out of our minds and into our hearts, into our souls, because that's where that inner voice will speak to us. And it takes a lot of effort and focus and commitment and dedication to pay attention to and connect with that inner wisdom, but everyone has access to it. And so if you have not began a meditation practice, that to me is paramount to being truly connected to that voice, because you'll never hear it if you don't learn to listen for it.
Okay. And in terms of your meditation practice, is it like you set aside 20 minutes a day, an hour? How does it work for you?
Well, think about this. When you're thinking about meditation for the first time, I want you to try to imagine training a little puppy.
Mm-hmm.
If you get a little puppy and you try to train him to poop in one little spot, the first thing he's going to do, he's going to run all over the place. And you're going to bring him back, and you're going to keep working him back till he stays in that one spot. Well, it might take some effort. It's going to take a little energy.
Sure.
But eventually, guess what? He slows down enough, stays in that one spot. He gets conditioned and trained to be still and to do what you want him to do. Well, the mind's the same way.
Okay.
When you first start a meditation practice, your mind is going to go all over the place. As a matter of fact, I remember the very first time I tried meditation. This is the thought that went through my head. I'll never forget it. It's like this. Oh no, you become one of those new age guys. This is stupid. This is stupid. What are you doing? And this is the conversation that was going on in my head. I'll never forget it, because I speak about it all the time, and because I remember specifically, that's the first thing that went through my head.
Oh, that's funny.
You got to become one of those new age guys. But what I know now, as a result of some 20 years of meditation, is that I don't know of another way to connect with our inner essence that will expedite that process faster than meditation. I don't know of it. So for me, it began with a commitment, 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the evening. I did that for about a year and a half. And then I just grew from there.
Wow. That is awesome discipline.
Yeah. And it's not easy. And if you stop to think about it, in my life, when I started this process, you got to realize that my life was in total chaos when I was doing this. I was living on my friends' floors at times, sleeping around with my brothers and sisters and cousins and stuff, because I didn't have a place to live, because I'd lost everything. But I didn't let go of my meditation practice. No matter where I was that committed to making sure that I got it. And so I stuck with it. And despite all the external circumstances, I maintained that meditation practice, because when I started, after probably about a month, I started to notice things were different. I noticed that I was more peaceful. I noticed that I was more relaxed. I noticed that my mind wouldn't race. And I used to get these awful headaches because I couldn't turn my mind off. It was like, and another thing that I really recommend is journaling, which is a powerful process for self-discovery. But I remember writing in my journal one night, I wish I could turn my mind off. That's all I wrote on the page. I wish I could turn my mind off, because the thoughts would be racing through my head so fast, so my head would literally feel like a migraine.
Sure.
And when I started this process, that subsided. I stopped having those headaches. I stopped feeling so hurried so stressful, and it's slow. The longer I stuck with it, the calmer I became, and the best benefit for me after 20 years of meditation is creativity. Because what I believe is when we learn to quiet our minds, we connect to the essence of who we are. The essence of who we are, I believe, is where all creativity flows from. And so as a writer, what I know is that before I write, I have a little meditation time, and I simply focus my attention on I want the universe to speak through me. And it's kind of like a prayer almost, that when I'm getting ready to write a book, I have this process where I do a little meditation, and I do this little surrendering process in which I say, dear God, just speak through me. And as I'm writing, it's I can't even explain it, but my first book I wrote back in 95, I wrote the entire book in 90 days.
Wow.
My second book, now remember, this has been a 20-year journey, but my second book, A New Conversation with Men, I wrote it in 32 days. My most recent book, I just released last year, I wrote the entire book in 8 days.
Wow.
In 8 days. So what I know is that that's not just Michael Taylor. That's something much bigger than Michael Taylor that's simply pouring through me. That's what creativity is.
Wow.
Simply this divine intelligence just wanting to pour and express through you. And so what I've come to know is when I meditate and get my mind out of the way and allow this divine intelligence to move through me, then there's infinite possibilities for what I can accomplish.
Oh my God, that's just amazing. So essentially, the clearer your mind is, the more creativity comes out of you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so that's why it's so important to start discovering the things that you're passionate about. See, as the people who are watching this and listening, you know, they may say, well, I don't like to write. Well, if you like to cook, it's no different. If there's something that you're really passionate about, when you get the mind out of the way, creativity just shows up. And so we just have to be willing to get the mind out of the way and allow the heart to speak through us.
Wow. What can I say? That is just absolutely amazing. That you couldn't have said a truer word there. And you know, you're not going to believe this. We are at the end of the interview. So, yeah, that's gone really, really quickly. Hey, so Michael, please tell everyone where they can reach out to you, your website, Twitter, Facebook, and also, more importantly, I know you've got a little gift for everyone. So please tell us how we can get that as well.
Okay, so if the easiest way to find me is online at coachmichaeltaylor.com. That's Coach spelled out Michael Taylor. That's Michael, Michael, michaeltaylor.com. And for those who are inspired by this message and they want to gain a little deeper insight about the changing roles of masculinity, I have a wonderful gift. And that gift is an ebook version of my book, which my radio and television show is based on. And it's called A New Conversation with Men. And what I'm doing is, again, I'm empowering men to embrace a new paradigm of masculinity. And it's definitely something that women will learn a lot from also, because it'll give you a deeper insight into how men think in a way that you might not have heard before. And so I would like to offer a free gift, and the way that they will receive that gift, if they go to the website and they click on the link there to purchase the ebook version, there's a coupon code that'll pop up, and just type in happy. We're talking about happiness today. So just type in the word happiness, and it'll give you access to the free ebook online.
Oh, fabulous. That's fantastic. Brilliant. Okay, guys, and gals, I'm afraid, as I said, we have come to the end of this. So Michael, thank you so much for joining us on the Top 10% Summit today. I hope you've all taken all of the incredible wisdom and information that Michael has given us down and get into action and get on with it. So look out for tomorrow's email inviting you to the next interview. Thank you, all of you, for listening. And above all, Michael, bottom of my heart, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to share my message.